Hey, how's it going? Hopefully everybody's having a great Sunday. It is Sunday. Wow, another week's past us. So we're back here with another episode of The Financial Mirror. I hope everyone is having a great weekend, a great week, and ultimately, hopefully, you're having a great month. Right? We've been on this journey for April in this financial literacy month. Um, the big focus of this month was to really focus on ensuring that we're able to bring some awareness around finances, because this is April is financial literacy month, and really just is in bringing that into your life, and hopefully that here at the Financial Mirror we really focus on creating content that can help you get to where you want to be financially. So this month I've put together this 4-week, it's a 4-part series over the next 4 weeks. Well, not the next 4, we're in week 3, but over 4 weeks throughout this month, in hopes of that I'm able to equip you with information that you need to create the change in your life, mostly around your finances. However, the great part about a lot of this series, this is applicable to not only your finances but just your life in general. So hopefully you've gotten something out of the past 2 weeks, where we talked about actually setting financial goals and building your financial plan. This week is just going to add on to that. All right. So I want to start off, as I've said in the past 2 weeks episodes, that none of this is easy. This week is actually all about helping to combat that inner part of this not being easy. But in the end, you'll be thankful for it. So as always, I know I sound like a broken record, but this is important for our listeners that are catching in to the series just this week and they've missed the last 2 episodes. So if that's you, go back, listen to the previous 2 episodes, and you'll get a lot more information about setting those goals and building those plans that can really help you get started. So this week is all about overcoming setbacks. So I titled it the 5 useful tips, because ultimately I'm going to go through 5 fairly simple in context. They're fairly simple to understand, but in actually applying these to your life, that can be a little bit tougher. But to me, I think that this is the part of the episode. So I think this is where a lot of people tend to struggle the most, is right here at this episode. So if you're joining in, I'm quite sure that you may have seen the title and been like, yeah, I have trouble with setbacks. I have trouble overcoming those. That's where I think a ton of people have a hard time. So I am going to focus today on helping you overcome those, because this is to me is the one part that most people struggle with. And the reason, in fact, is pretty simple, is because even as children, right, we've dreamed of things, we've made these goals, we've developed ideas of where we want to be. The problem is that in the dream, we never actually thought about how we could get there. How can we, be a millionaire? How can we live life debt free? How can we do all these things? How can we achieve the career path that we wanted to achieve? That's all things that people, they dream of and they think about, but they don't ever really think about how they're going to get to that, how they're actually going to achieve those things that they want. So that's not a bad thing. I'm not telling you to beat yourself up because you didn't have life all figured out at 5 years old. Like I'm really not expressing that. Instead, what I want to focus in on, I really want to tune in on the fact that bringing knowledge to this part, this setbacks part, when you're building the plan, is important, because obviously things never go as planned, and we talked about this last week. And when things don't go as planned, what happens? Well, those are called setbacks. You'll face setbacks, and that they will try to prevent you from getting to where you want to be. These setbacks, if we want to personify them, they literally are the person that is keeping you from being where you want to be. So Some examples of financial setbacks specifically is budgeting's good, right? Everything is going good with your budget and your expenses are in order, and then all of a sudden you lose your job. COVID created a lot of those type of setbacks for people. But that's a setback, right? Like you're budgeting, you're doing all these things right, your expenses are in order, you're paying off your debt, and then you lose your job. That losing your job is a setback. It's setting you back from getting to where you want to be. Another one is life's great, you're paying off your debt, and then your car needs a repair. Let's say it's a $2,000 repair, and that's really that's a setback on your ability to pay off debt. So this list goes on, and the one thing that I want you to remember is that these are just setbacks unless you make them permanent. Like, and I use the term setback loosely because a setback is like, okay, well, it set me back for, a little bit of time, but I'm going to get back on my feet. I'm going to roll back and I'm going to continue what I was doing. But some people make setbacks permanent, and that's where the big issue lies. The big issue lies in the fact that some people make these setbacks permanent, and that can't be. So, we're going to walk through some things that you can really focus on, 5 tips to be exact, and we're going to get through them and continue to, if you can use these and apply them, you will continue to work through all these setbacks and you'll achieve your goals. All right, so going into number 1, this is all about you. So number 1 is self-talk. All right, so the first thing that has to happen is you've got to control your self-talk, like how you talk to yourself. So when it comes to getting what you want out of life, bouncing through setbacks, self-talk is what helps that. It influences a lot of how well you're able to bounce back through your setbacks. All right, so think about it. You spend every second of your life inside your head. Some of those things inside of your head are conscious, some of them are subconscious, but all in all, they are your thoughts. If you're telling yourself things that are negative, and like putting yourself down and judging yourself and all these kind of things, you're going to start believing the things that you're saying. So if you're constantly talking to yourself in a negative light, you're going to start to believe that. So number 1 being self-talks is that when a setback happens, we have to have a strong foundation for positive self-talk. That's going to take you a long way. So there's many books out there on mastering self-talk. There's a lot of information out there about mastering self-talk, but if you struggle with living in this negative self-talk mindset, that could be a huge piece of what's holding you back from being where you want to be. And this is not just financially. This is just in life in general. You've got to control your self-talk. So here's some steps. I'm going to run through some steps that can possibly help get you out of that negative self-talk loop. First thing is that you've got to figure out exactly what it is that triggers you and puts you into a negative self-talk loop. All right. This could be anything, but once you identify the thing that actually, like, it could be work, it could be money, it could be anything. When you think about this, you start to think about everything else in a negative light. Like you put yourself into this negative self-talk loop. Once you identify that, you can start to face, the challenges that come with being in that self-talk loop before they even happen. Like if you know that when a financial setback happens in terms of not having enough money to pay for it or pay for something, whatever it is, like that car repair. Let's use the car repair. If you know that, as soon as you get told that your car needs to be repaired, you instantly should start thinking about, okay, I'm about to go into a negative self-talk loop. I've got to get myself out of that. I've got to start to reinforce the fact that I've done everything that I can do to prepare for times like this. I don't need any other negativity on my life. You've got to start telling you these positive things, because you know that you're triggered by thinking about finances, and that puts you in a negative self-talk loop. Okay, so identify things that trigger you to do that, and then give yourself positive affirmation. So this can be something that you do daily. This could be something that you do weekly. This could be something that you do when you need it. This could be anything, but you've got to affirm yourself with positive things. So telling yourself things that are positive throughout this whole entire financial journey, throughout this whole journey of life, or however you want to look at this, that's very important. Because if using finances, for instance, if you're currently working to get out of debt and a setback happens, you need something positive to happen, right? And that can be something in your head. That can be something that you tell yourself. That can be anything. But you've got to get back to being positive minded before all the negative just rushes in. So here's an example. So if you're trying to get yourself out of debt and then you need that car repair, what you have to tell yourself is things like a negative would be like, man, like I'm already trying to get out of debt, and now I have this repair I have to do, and I have to do like that. That's just, and it's gonna build, right? One thing, you're gonna look at something else negative, something else negative, something else negative, and it's gonna just build. So the faster, like this is a positive. The faster I get out, or figure out how to get through this car repair, the faster that I can get myself out of debt, and then the faster I can have more of my money back every month. We just turned that same situation into a positive, because there was tons of positive things that, like things happen to everybody, but turning that into a positive is important. So giving yourself that positive affirmation, it's important. So you've got to get yourself set up for positive self-talk. You've got to get yourself set up to be able to respond to these things early, instead of waiting until you're already deep down in this spiral self-sabotage that can happen when you start to let yourself get into a negative self-talk loop. And then something else that you can do, and this is this is gonna sound crazy, you just have to bear with me, but you can talk to yourself in a mirror. And I got this out of a book. The book's called Guerrilla Mindset. And he talks about how, the author talks about how you can just look at yourself in the mirror, and it sounds crazy, but when you get into this negative self-talk trap, you end up increasing your self-doubt, and it can lead to more negative self-talk. So in reality, what ends up happening is you start talking about things, start telling yourself things that are actually really far from reality. Like they're actually not even near what actually is really happening. Yet it's controlling your mind as you're going through this negative self-talk. So if you take a moment and you go stand in front of the mirror, and this is I got this out of the book, but you go stand in front of the mirror and begin to talk everything that you're thinking. Begin to say it out loud. Look at yourself in the mirror and watch your facial expressions. Watch how you can start to be like, whoa, yeah, this is not real. Like this, like I actually am like just telling myself these things. It's easy. It's easy when they're in your head. The second they come out of your mouth, you can start to realize that it's a little less realistic than you think. So take a moment, go stand in front of the mirror, and start to say everything out loud that you're thinking. Don't adjust your words now. Say exactly what it is you're thinking out loud. Look yourself in the mirror and do that. And the next time you're in trouble, when this like negative self-talk loop, just watch your facial expressions as you're saying these things. And you'll realize that what you're saying is all in your head, and it actually doesn't really make that much sense when you say it out loud. So that's number one. You've got to master your self-talk. You've got to get in control of your self-talk. All right. So step number 2, or tip number 2, is accepting responsibility. So I built this whole financial mirror stream off the idea that is all about changing yourself to change your outcome, right? That's the whole point. I focus mostly on your finances, but a lot of this stuff is transferable between a lot of different things. So when you focus on yourself, you're your biggest asset. You have to fix like things that you can control, and that's the only things that you can actually control fixing. Okay, so financial mirror was built solely on the fact that if you look in the mirror and fix what's in the mirror, which is yourself, all of a sudden your life can start to change the way that you want it. So tip number two is accept responsibility, because if there's one thing that I've learned throughout my time in the military was the simple fact that you have to take responsibility for any and everything, right? So myself as a company commander, I was responsible for anything that my company did or anything that they didn't do. It was still my fault. It was still my fault, and I have to take responsibility for that. And it's simple. It's very simple. This is that. Don't read into it too much, because I'm telling you, if they didn't do it, it's my fault. If they did do it, it's something I did that helped them get to where they did it, right? Because it's easy. It's easy to sit there and say, well, if Johnny Boy over there would have done this, if he would have done this, then that wouldn't have happened. It's Johnny Boy's fault that XYZ didn't happen. We wouldn't have had this setback if Johnny Boy would have done what he wanted, what I told him to do. I told the platoon to do this, and they didn't do it. So it's Johnny Boy's fault, right? Well, sure, you could say that, but you have to look yourself in the mirror once again and ask yourself, did I do everything to get Johnny Boy to be able to do what XYZ is, what needed to be done? Sure. You could easily say all of these things, but you have to ask yourself, did I do everything as the company commander? Did I do everything to ensure that Johnny Boy did what he was supposed to do? The answer is no. There's always something else you could have done, right? And until you say, I did every single thing that I possibly could do, and Johnny Boy still didn't do it, I still say you have to accept responsibility. Okay, so I don't think you can ever stop trying to build that piece where Johnny Boy would have known what to do. But some of the things, like, I could have asked more confirmation questions. Hey, do you understand exactly what it is that we're doing? Tell me what it is that we're doing, and get a little confirmation from Johnny Boy. I could have sat down in all the platoon briefings as the company commander, and I could have been like, whoa, hold on. That's not what my intent was. That was not what I was expressing as the commander's intent. That's not what I was asking for it to get done. So now there's actually a hiccup in the whole plan, and it was something me as the commander did not clearly and specifically identify to the platoons. And this list continues. But the thing is this is always something that you have to accept responsibility for something that you did or failed to do. And you have to look at that in your life. So the one thing that I'm sure most people, because this is new to a lot of people, accepting responsibility is a very hard thing, because it really tugs at people have trouble being wrong. People have trouble when there's other things at play. People have trouble saying, well, I did what I was supposed to do, and so didn't do what they were supposed to do, and so it's so-and-so's fault. So once you get away from that piece, your life begins to just transform, okay? Because I'm sure people right now are thinking, as I'm going through this, they're like, well, yeah, you say all that, but I lost my job due to COVID, and how was I supposed to know COVID was going to happen? I lost my job due to that. Well, you're right. No one knew COVID was going to happen. No one had any idea COVID was going to happen. So how do you accept responsibility for losing your job? Well, it's not in this sense, and this is where I want you to start to think about things in a little bit different way as we go through these tips. It's not that you lost your job that's really the issue. I'm sure you have the ability to go out and get another job. I'm sure that's possible. The true issue is that you don't have the financial means to continue to support your family, continue to build your, to take care of things financially that you have to take care of. So what could you have done to ensure that was taken care of? Well, did you build your emergency fund properly? Did you start working to eliminate your debt? Are you debt free? All of these things are things that you could have done to help offset the setback of losing your job. And once again, you have to take that responsibility for that piece. So some of this is hard to hear. I understand. I truly understand that some of this is not easy to hear. Some of it is is not exactly what you want to hear. But the biggest thing is you have to understand that the second that you start taking responsibility, accepting that responsibility for your life, you've now put yourself back in control. Because if your whole entire life is given to someone else, I don't even know who Johnny Boy is. I'm just made Johnny Boy up. But if I have to always, resort to blaming someone else, I'm giving Johnny Boy control of my life, because I'm now relying on Johnny Boy to get me to where I want to be. And if Johnny Boy fails, I fail. Well, no, accept the responsibility, move forward with your life. And things get better. So easy ways to stop eliminating blame is, first, recognize that you're blaming people, right? So if you catch yourself blaming, so it'd be like, all right, well, I just started blaming someone. Let me stop. And step 2 is own it yourself. So self-blaming is okay. Self-blaming ties into accepting responsibility. Always ask, what's the lesson in this, right? Embrace the uncomfortableness and challenge yourself. What can I learn from this for yourself, and then use that to move forward, okay? So number 1 was self-talk, mastering your self-talk. Number 2 was accepting responsibility. Number 3 is remembering why you started. So when you have a setback, remember why you started on your journey to achieve whatever goal it is. So when setbacks set in, this is another huge piece that is important to remember, because when one thing happens that sort of gives you that setback and initiates that first setback, you begin that negative self-talk, right? And you can lose track of your why. We've talked about in the previous 2 episodes, you have to identify your why. So for instance, you're trying to stick to your budget, and your why is because you really want to build that strong retirement account. You really want to have a great retirement account built up. And then you have these, expenses that don't allow you to put money aside, and for whatever reason, let's use the car repair, for instance. Like all of a sudden this car repair happens, it sets you back. And it takes away from your ability to put money aside for a while. Let's say like a month, 2 months. It can be easy to never go back and begin to try to achieve your goals once again. That can be easy at that point. It can be very easy. And then all of a sudden you never, your retirement, your whole why of building that strong retirement account starts to fall by the wayside, because you let that setback trigger you to forget your why, and then all of a sudden you're no longer even working towards your goal. In life, and that's a big thing, because you can think about this in more of a life lesson, but use going to the gym as an example, because I'm sure everyone knows this feeling, because I know this feeling. You'll skip one day at the gym, one day because you're sick, or because you just don't feel like going, or whatever. You'll skip one day, and then that'll lead you to, well, I skipped Monday, so what's the point of going the rest of the week, right? Like, I already skipped Monday. Like, what's the other 4 days going to get me? I skipped Monday. And then all of a sudden you get on this slippery slope, and then before you realize it, you've now skipped 6 months of going to the gym, because it all started from that one day. You didn't go one day. One day would have set you back nothing. Like, let's be honest. That one day probably would have done you more good than hurt. You probably got a nice, you probably didn't feel well because you just weren't well rested or something. I don't know, but that one day has now led you to self-sabotage, and you've now skipped 6 months. It's a very slippery slope. But that's why you have to remember your why. If your goal was to put back money for retirement, you have to remember your why. And when you have that why, that's what keeps you going. That's what gives you a reason to not let that single setback keep you from getting to where you want to be. All right. So remembering why you started and getting that why under your belt is important. Okay. So that's number 3. Remember why you started. Number 4 is always jump back in where you were. So when those setbacks happen, you have to know that you have the ability to jump right back in where you were. This one's pretty self-explanatory, and the one thing I want you to take away from this is that you have to understand that achieving your goals takes tons of persistence. It takes tons of perseverance, right? If you have a setback, that's okay. We all have setbacks. Everyone has setbacks. I have setbacks. You have setbacks. Everyone has a setback. Jeff Bezos has setbacks. Everyone has a setback, but you have to keep going. Get back in where where you got out, and start making progress again. So if you miss that day at the gym, and you now skip the whole week, when Monday rolls back around, you got to jump back in. You got to get back in it. I don't care how you feel. You got to get back in it. If you were trying to save $400 a month, you had that car repair that set you back, you got to get back in it. And this could mean that you jump back in with $20 a month, and you start putting away $20 a month, and then you build back up to $40 a month, and then $80 a month, then $160 a month. I don't care. You've got to jump back in. You've got to start building that muscle again. Because the biggest thing is to just focus on moving that pendulum forward, focus on making progress, and not saying, well, I couldn't save $400, so I just won't save anything. My goal was $400. I'm not able to save $400, so I'm just not going to save anything. Get out of that mindset. Get back in, jump back into it, start working back towards those goals. Whatever those goals were, jump back in and get back where you were. So that's number 4. Jump back in where you were. Last one, number 5, don't make failure an option. So you've got to step out of your comfort zone. You've got to get, into thinking in this almost unrealistic mindset, because there's always more than one way of doing something. When that negative self-talk kicks in, you can start to believe this didn't go the way I planned, and there's no other way for me to accomplish this. That's not true. There's always more than one way to do something. So this is important to understand, because while your original plan may have failed and it led to this setback, your life is far from over. Your goal is far from being over. Like, you've got to get back in there. The biggest thing for you to do at that moment is dig deep, figure out another method that you can use to achieve whatever task or goal that is in front of you, right? And don't give up. It's easy to give up. It's easy to start thinking like, well, I had this plan didn't work out, and then all of a sudden, I just don't think that goal is really feasible. I don't think it's really realistic. I don't think it's achievable. That's not true. Don't lie to yourself. Don't stand there and lie to yourself. Your goal is realistic. Your goal is achievable. You came up with it being achievable when you created the goal. We went through how to goal set. We went through how to build that plan. We went through all these things. You know that it's possible. You know that it's achievable, and you can do it. So don't give up, because that ability to not give up is really the part that separates the haves and the have-nots. It really is. If you look at something that you want and you give up at your first little obstacle, that's kind of what separates the haves and the have-nots. When life gets hard, have-nots give in. When things don't go as planned, have-nots give in, and they decide that they really didn't want it that bad. And that's that doesn't have to be you. I'm not saying that it is you, because to be all honest, you've listened this far into the episode, so you have the desire to get more out of life than to be what I'm using as a have-not. You can achieve all the goals that you have, but you can't give up. Don't make failing on any task or goal an option. You cannot give up. Okay? Don't give up. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to give you some quick takeaways, because this episode is a little more, to the gut a little bit. It's a little more setbacks are not fun. They're not these. I just bought my first home, or I just saved my first million, or I just paid off my car, or I just paid off all my debt. Those are happy moments, right? But what I want you to realize is that those times when you see people, Dave Ramsey does on his show, he does a debt-free scream, and it pretty much is like these people that go on his show and they just paid off all their debt, and they yell, we're debt-free, and it's interesting because that's the part you get to hear. You get to hear about them screaming, we're debt free. But what what most people, if they only heard the we're debt free, they're like, wow, like they just paid off $180,000 in debt in 6 months or sometimes people do some unrealistic things. I'm not even kidding. But what you have to realize is that they do actually in his episode talk about all these setbacks that they went through. And that's the part that I really want you to dig into. Like when you're looking at things and you're really starting to see that things are just not going the way that you saw, and everyone else around you is having, more success with their finances. They're having more, less bumps in the road or whatever. They have their own set of setbacks. Every person does. Everybody has some setback that happens in this financial journey, in this journey of life. They're inevitable. But if you hit a goal and you didn't have a single setback, I'll be honest with you. I don't think that was a goal really worth making, right? Like, the goal just wasn't that tough. Like if my goal is to, let me think. Let me think. Let me think of something that, like me personally, I don't really, I'm not really a picky eater. What's something, oh, so like doing homework, right? So if I'm doing homework or whatever, and then all of a sudden my goal is to be like, oh, well, that's not a good one either. I'm having trouble with this one. So I guess what I'm trying to come up with is the simple fact. Like, let's say I have a food I don't like. Let's say that I absolutely hate like broccoli or something. Like I enjoy broccoli, but let's say I hate broccoli and I make a goal. Well, I'm not going to eat broccoli. Well, obviously I'm not going to have any setbacks in not eating broccoli, right? I guess probably a terrible example, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is that your goal is going to have setbacks unless it's something so simple that it's not even really a goal. It's really just something that you do, right? Because goals normally, and I'm not saying all goals, I'm not saying that inevitably goals are supposed to be hard. Like they don't have to be hard. Just some are more difficult than others. But goals normally follow the same sort of path as like a stock chart or something, right? You have these high points, and then when things are good, these serve as that like reminder, like I'm going and this is where I'm trying to end up. And I'm on a high, like I feel great about my goal. And then they also have these like low points, and that's sort of there to humble you and motivate you to get there. And when we listen to those stories that people have made it through these ridiculous setbacks, it's weird because when they normally make it through these ridiculous setbacks, like I'm talking like ridiculous setbacks, like people are told no on this business idea they have, for 9 straight months, and they've talked to 500 investors and every single one of them say no. Like that's a ridiculous setback, right? But then they keep going and they keep persevering, and then all of a sudden they achieve more than they ever dreamed of. They made it through the hardest part. They made it through that aspect of being told no for 9 straight months, and then all of a sudden their whole idea blossoms. And it wasn't for 9 months that they just were like pitching the same idea, right? I'm sure that they were in taking feedback and making it better, and all these setbacks were happening, and that's the true beauty of it, is that they were able to really get a passionate love for what it was they were trying to accomplish because of the fact that they had all these setbacks, and then this business idea they had just bloomed, right? So I want to bring up, I just want to wrap this up, and I want to bring up a book by Bill Hogan, and it's called How Do You Eat an Elephant? And it's one bite at a time, right? Like the book is called How Do You Eat an Elephant? One Bite at a Time. And this is important for your success, because your path to financial success is not going to be this like straight line. And like I said, it looks more like a stock chart. It's going to go up really high. It's going to come down really low. But ultimately the chart, it's not going to stop. It's going to continue, right? And that big picture is what really matters. Like that journey of having those setbacks, while keeping your why in mind is important, because in the end, you're going to come out much better than you thought you would, right? And so I think that that's the part that I really just want to drive home with people, is the fact that you're going to shock yourself. Like, you're really going to shock yourself when you apply these 5 tips. You master your self-talk, you accept the responsibility, you remember why you started, you jump back in right where you left off, or jump right back in as soon as you can, and then don't make failure an option. When you take those and you apply those to your life, you're gonna shock yourself. You're gonna end up much better than you ever thought or even imagined, right? So once again, I hope that this is that third piece. This is that third piece that I want for this financial literacy month, and we're going to wrap it up next week. Look forward to completing that event and getting this whole series wrapped up and put a nice little bow on it. But if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, follow the channel, like the video, leave a comment. Those comments really go a long way. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. Go to the bottom and write a written review. Those really help with getting this information out and spread to others. And I want to leave you with one last thing. It's a quote by St. Francis of Assisi. Start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and then suddenly you'll be doing the impossible. I want to leave you with that. So all the comments that y'all always share, I love continuing to hear from my listeners, and everyone is truly a blessing. And with that, once again, thank you for tuning in this week, and I'll see y'all next week. Peace.